2. Starts in the middle. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly, I say to you, none of these will lose their reward. Amen.
As I mentioned earlier, we are celebrating the work of Wellspring today, and I know that many of you know that Carl Wall has been very involved with that, and also Jack is now the chair of Wellspring in Park Rapids. And Jack is able to be with us in person. Carl is somewhere in Europe, and so he's joining us by videotape. He came in before he left and he videotaped some segments for us because Carl had the opportunity to go back to Africa to see the work of Wellspring in person this June, and so he will be bringing us some updated information on that. But I am going to now turn the microphone over to Jack, and he has some words to say to us to start us off.
Thank you very much, Pastor Lord. Good morning. Good morning. I would like to say, first of all, we in the Wellspring organization, and a number of us, on our board, or we call Leadership Council, are members of this church. We are so thrilled that year after year, this pastor of ours is so supportive of us. We could not ask for any pastor being any greater help to Wellspring. And we are convinced that because of her leadership, that is a lot of the reason why you folks in this great church have contributed so well to Wellspring over these last 5 years. It's 5 years that we've been an organization here in Park Rapids. Wellspring started in Fargo in 2005. We've been here since 2011. So I want to thank all of you who have supported us in the past and embraced our Wellspring vision of making clean water available to all the people in the world. That is what we are celebrating in our worship this Sunday morning. I'd like to share with you some numbers, which you may find interesting. I hope you do. A couple of weeks ago, Carl looked back over the donation history of Wellspring and discovered that since 2012, Wellspring, which is an arm of World Vision, we work closely with World Vision. We wouldn't be where we are without working with them. We're based in Fargo and Park Rapids. We've received donations and pledges for 436 wells. And that means that 139,000 people have been given access to clean water in the last 48 months. If you break it down further, in the last 4 years, we have averaged 2,914 people per month have experienced life-changing access to clean water, or 97 people per day. We think that's rather amazing. Hubbard Church has been a huge part of this effort right from the beginning. Since 2012, when we had our first 4 Weeks for Water campaign, again led by Pastor Lori, who said, let's do this in a big way. We did. This church has funded over 23 wells. I'd like to remind you, as World Vision tells us, each well costs $15,000 to drill and maintain. This church funded 23. That means because of your giving, at least 7,000 people have clean water. Your generosity has improved the quality of life for all of these people. But just consider for a moment, in communities without clean water, as many as 5 to 7 out of every 10 children die at a young age because of waterborne illnesses. You have literally saved the lives of a lot of children. Something to really be excited about.
And that's something you all should celebrate. 23 wells. That's amazing in just a few years. As I said, Carl wanted to be here today to celebrate with us the work that Wellspring is doing, but he is out of town. But he came in, and the first video that you're going to see, Carl is talking about what it takes for a village in Africa to receive a well. And I don't think we've heard quite that information the way he saw it in this trip.
I had a chance to go to Zambia in June with 2 of my daughters who had never been there, as well as another 13-year-old grandson, and that in itself was such a great experience. But every time that I've had a chance to see what goes on with the poorest of the poor and their needs. It has been very beneficial, and I've learned a lot of new things. For example, this particular time, I learned that it isn't just a gift for clean water. They have to earn the right to have clean water as part of a culture change that World Vision and Wellspring are basically demanding before they get clean water. There are 5 things that every family in a community must do before the borehole is drilled. Those 5 things include a ventilated latrine, a tippy tap, which would be kind of like an outdoor wash basin that is used to wash their hands. There's a little bar of soap on top of one of the posts, and remember, it's still with dirty water or contaminated water, but it's washing their hands and getting the culture of health and sanitation. The third thing that must be part of every family, and there could be 25, 30 families that would be a part of getting a clean well, so all of those families must have these 5 things. The third thing would be an elevated dish rack, and that is to get dishes that they use for cooking up above where animals can reach them, because they don't have cupboards, and these dishes just are on the ground, and animals don't have fences, so it isn't just wild animals, even their own tame animals will come, and if they smell anything connected with food, obviously the sanitation issues are not very good until they have an elevated dish rack. The fourth thing is a private bath, and they certainly can't have water inside their homes because it's all dirt floors, so you have to think differently. And so a bath doesn't happen unless they go in a river where there could often be crocodiles, and it's not private anyway in a river. So building just a bamboo, kind of like about the size of a shower, but where they would just have a private bath, again getting them the idea of health and sanitation before they get clean water, because clean water by itself isn't going to have the impact unless their culture has changed to live differently with health and sanitation issues at a much higher level. And the fifth thing is that they have a garbage pit where they are putting all of their garbage, and interestingly, there wasn't much that we saw in that garbage pit because they use everything. It isn't like what we have here in America. For example, we had a chance to go to a medical clinic that before 9 months earlier than when we got there, before that time, they had nothing but dirty water. So they wouldn't get, a doctor would not come, and neither would a professional nurse in Zambia come. So they had to it was a medical clinic, but if they came and had some disease, they were also using dirty water, and they would often leave with diarrhea. And once they got clean water, which was, as I said, 9 months before we were there in June, the diarrhea instances dropped from 100 plus per year to 4. And they held up hands of 4. They were so proud that only 4 people had gotten diarrhea in the last year or the last 9 months because of clean water. So it certainly covers more than just helping an individual family. And then we heard the story of the nurse, Catherine, who had been there for many years, and it was her job to take all the dirty linens, birthing clinic linens and other dirty linens, to be washed down to the river. And that walk to the river was unbelievable. And a lot of the people, and basically the ladies in our group, made that walk with Catherine through mud and difficult conditions. She's carrying these dirty linens, of course, year after year. It was every other day that she would do this. And they made that walk. When they got to the river, it was also had crocodiles in it, so she had to deal with that. And then washing those linens, and that water would keep rolling downstream where other people would be using this water. None of this is health and sanitation, but they had no choice. This is what they had to do. And so once clean water came, everything changed. And now Catherine doesn't have to make that long trip. She said she can multitask, is the word she used, and do other things that are so much more important in helping this to be a better medical facility. So we certainly have seen the expansion of clean water beyond just the benefit inside a family home. A school would serve, as a guess, it could be up to 10 to 15 different communities. Some schools that we've seen in the past are boarding schools where the students would actually come and stay. Others are sort of a walking network, but there's no buses that are bringing these kids to school. So it's got to be somewhat of a central location where there are a fairly dense number of people involved in that general geographic area. But a kid could walk as much as 15 miles to school, and that's just part of their day. We had a chance to visit a school where having clean water is such a benefit. And many of the students that come to that school come from a home that yet don't have clean water. It could even be because their community hasn't passed the test for 5 changes that they must make, cultural changes. But hopefully over the next 2, 3, 4 to 5 years, they will attain that. And so school is the only oasis where they can have clean water. And the schools have vitality, tremendous discipline, marching and singing. It was just fun to be a part of the program that they presented. We had the chance to be inside a classroom. Sesame Street has partnered with World Vision, and they even have a special puppet named Raya who gives a health and sanitation instruction to all of the African students as they show these videos. And it was very interesting to see the dynamics as they were teaching health and sanitation. We also were in a classroom where on the board was IT questions, and there were 9 questions. 3 of the questions had the word Microsoft in them, just to point out that here we are in a remote area of northeastern Zambia, but the world has gotten very small because of technology, and these people know that as they get education, communications and the ability to reach the outside world is available to them through satellites and whatever, and therefore IT and technology is a very vital part of their education. Our 13-year-old grandson that was became the rock star, as kids identify with kids, and when we were getting ready to leave, George, who had presented some soccer balls that we had brought with, they started yelling, "We want George, we want George." And George had to go back and shake the hands of over 100 kids that got in line just because they wanted to shake his hand. So you can imagine what goes on in his mind too, because he didn't do anything, he was just there. He did present them on behalf of all of us, those soccer balls, but kids identify with other kids in a special way, and we saw it again live there in Zambia. Once they have some exposure to water, World Vision continues to work with them to improve their agricultural practices. They call it Farming God's Way, and it's using conservation methods. It's using mulch to put on top of the crops so that they can hold in the moisture. There's a certain plant that they can use in among the fields that produces nitrogen into the soil. So we saw that plant in many different locations. And of course, just access to having some water allows crops to be 3 to 10 times better than it was before, and everything's relative. And when you can raise something that's going to give you 10 times what you used to have, it allows the opportunity to improve your life in many different ways. For example, a trundle pump was bought by one farmer who had learned to farm more correctly by World Vision practices, and he was able to buy a $75 trundle pump, which would bring water from a lower level of a river up to where his crops were. And this, we're talking about maybe a total of 75 to 100 yards, but the pump would be used, and then they would spray the crops with water, where one of the crops is onions, which is their cash crop. That's their biggest crop. That's kind of like maybe potatoes around here. And because of access to this water, that's all part of a much greater crop for them. And none of this would be happening if they didn't have better farming practices, which is all part of, once they receive clean water, they now move to other things that will bring them out of extreme poverty. I can sit and tell every Hubbard United Methodist Church donor, or any donors to Wellspring throughout this region, that your dollars are doing what you hoped they would do.
Now, remember when I started out by saying that a couple of weeks ago, Carl had added up some numbers? Well, now those numbers are old. I'm sure a few people like Steve, you don't know what I'm talking about when I said 423 wells. A lot has happened, even in just the last couple of weeks. I'm pleased to be able to share with you that Wellspring has reached the halfway mark in our ambitious campaign to fund 1,000 wells by October 2019. Just a few weeks ago, we have received donations and pledges for a little bit over 500 wells. So we are thrilled that we are a little bit over halfway to the goal, with a little over 3 more years to reach it. We are providing 165,000 people with new life through clean water. Truly amazing. Now, we at Wellspring are getting ready to have our 6th annual Wine to Water reception event downtown at Bella. Many of you have been there in the past. We hope to come again this year. It is coming up on Tuesday, September 20th, from 5 until 8. We know there is an event scheduled here at the church that same evening at 7:30. The end-of-life planning session with attorney Sarah Swanson, sponsored by our Memorial Garden team. Just want to point out that you can join us for both events if you can, and hope you can. Since we're starting at 5, the program here is at 7:30, so maybe you can make both. Finally, on behalf of Wellspring and World Vision, I want to thank all of you for what you have done to support the work of making sure that everyone has access to clean water. We aren't the only ones who are working on this issue. Recently, many government organizations and non-government organizations, such as Wellspring, made a commitment at a conference held in New York City that by the year 2030, no person in the world will be more than 15 minutes away from the supply of clean water. That'll be an even greater day to celebrate everything, and it's something that, we take so much for granted, the life-saving gift of water. This is helping so many people in the world and will continue to. So we thank you, and God bless you.
I said this is a celebration today, and it really is a celebration. 23 wells that you have funded in about 4 years. I really think you should give yourselves a hand, because that translates into people today who live better. It translates into people who live today because of your generosity. So when Jack was up here, he said that each well costs a little over $15,000, and that is true. And most of the time when we have given, though, $5,000 or a little more than that has been enough to build a well, because every dollar we give is matched twice by national donors, national money that has been given, commitments that have been made to clean water. But right now we also have a local match, and so every dollar we give is matched 6 times. 6 times. So it's a little over $2,500 that it takes for us to raise to provide a new well in Africa. So I just think we can do more than ever before. So thank you. Our verse today, those who give a cup of cold water to a little one will be remembered by God. We bring a smile to God's face when we think about the most basic things that people need and say we have enough to share. Would you please pray with me? Gracious Lord, we thank you for the many blessings that we have received, for the many blessings that we have known our entire lives, blessings that we take for granted because they are so common to us. We also thank you for the opportunity that you have given us to be a blessing to other people in so many different ways. And today we thank you for the blessing and the opportunity of blessing people across the world in ways that not only change their lives but actually save their lives. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of the work you do in this world. Amen.